After painting my whole one-bedroom apartment in this DIY faux lime wash style, I'm going to tell you how to do it so you can get it right the first time. It's not hard, but if you're a detailed freak like me, there are a few things you'll want to keep in mind, and hopefully this video can answer all the questions you have. So to do the faux lime wash paint, you have to take two colors that are similar but different in shade, and that's what gives it that kind of textured look. I want to talk a little bit more about choosing the paint colors for your faux lime wash because this is a crucial step in making sure that it actually comes out the way that you are envisioning. The most important thing when picking your two colors is to make sure that they have the same undertones. In general, you have warm, cool, and neutral undertone families, so you want to make sure that when you're picking two colors, they're both either have a warm undertone, a cool undertone, or neutral. The other thing to think about when you're picking colors is how noticeable or subtle do you want the lime wash effect to look. If you want a more subtle look, you want to pick two shades that aren't super different in their light and darkness. And if you want a little bit more of a contrast, then you can pick shades that have a little more difference in their light and darkness. Even if you go the more subtle route, you want to make sure that there's enough of a difference between the two colors, because if you pick shades that are too close together, you just won't really get that effect. It'll fall flat and it'll look kind of muddy instead. The easiest way to make sure that you're picking two colors that are going to be complementary and that are within the same undertone family is to just pick two shades of the same tone of color. When you go to the paint store and they have all those paint chip chains, literally just take one of them and pick two different shades, one lighter and one darker. Since you're picking colors from the same tone family, then you're not going to get any surprises and they will for sure complement each other. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what paint colors would work for me, especially since I started with my bedroom, which is windowless. So I kind of started with this approach of like, what colors of white would look good in a windowless room. And I started inputting all these different paint names, asking ChatGPT what the undertone family was, and really just asking it like, would these two look good together? Would they complement each other since they're able to pull what the undertone of those colors is? Ultimately, honestly, this process got really overwhelming, especially because when you're working with like an off-white, there are just so many options of white. So what I ended up doing was just using two colors that someone else used and showed in their video so that I knew for sure, okay, these colors look good together and I've already seen the end result. I did still validate with ChatGPT that they were in the same undertone family, and they were. They were both warm undertones. One was a warm white and one was a warm grayish. If there's two colors that you really like that aren't necessarily within the exact same tone, I would just double check with ChatGPT to make sure that they have the same undertone family. It's recommended that if you're going to do a faux lime wash with regular paint, that you use a matte finish, since that will give you the closest look to the real thing. But honestly, I did an eggshell because that was what was on sale and it's easier to clean. I think applying the eggshell in this textured faux lime wash way actually reduces the sheen, and ultimately it's more durable and overall more forgiving than matte paint. So I definitely wouldn't say it's a hard rule that you have to get a matte finish paint to achieve this look. And in fact, if I were to do it again, I would still get the eggshell finish. The other thing you might want to think about when you're buying your paint is what color you're going to paint the door and the trim. Because I live in a small one bed, one bath, I knew that I wanted to paint the doors in the same faux lime wash effect so that they would kind of seamlessly blend in with the rest of the wall. And that's because there isn't a whole lot of wall space, so I didn't want the door kind of sticking out like a sore thumb. I really wanted it to appear as if it was part of the rest of the wall. And then for the baseboards, I chose to go with the darker of the two colors. The ceilings here are not very high. They're, I think, about 8 feet. So I didn't want to have this like crisp line kind of breaking up the wall and visually showing you how short the wall actually is. So I chose to use the darker of the two shades, and that really just made everything blend a lot more seamlessly, because when you mix the lighter and darker color together to get the lime wash, the overall effect is in between the light and the dark, but it's still closer, I would say, to the darker color than to the lighter color. So if you paint the baseboard the lighter color, you are going to visually notice it a lot more than if you paint it the darker color. So have an idea of what color you might want to paint your doors, your trim, and your baseboard, so that when you buy the paint, you know that you might need a little bit more of that shade. You do want to keep the two colors separated so that when you dip your paintbrush in, it's only going on either side. I just put this cardboard piece and taped it down in the middle of the tray. And I would recommend doing that because the first time I did it, I just tried to make a little piece like this with just aluminum foil and it wasn't sturdy enough. So that's why the second time I did it with the cardboard, and then I am still gonna put aluminum foil over this as well. So you have your paint supplies, you've cleaned, prepped, and taped your walls, and you're ready to paint. The application technique is very simple, just time consuming. Dip your paintbrush into your paint tray so that the lighter shade is on one side and the darker shade is on the other side. Brush your paint onto the wall in an X pattern, but make sure you don't continuously go over the same spots, since that will blend the paint too much and you'll end up simply mixing the two colors together rather than getting the depth from having some areas with the darker paint, some areas with the lighter one, and some areas that are more mixed and blended. You can see that I work with a very small area at a time before I go and dip my brush back in. Some folks suggest dipping your paintbrush into water each time before dipping it into the paint, but I found that that approach leaves way too many streak marks and requires multiple coats to build depth, since it can be tricky to be consistent with the water ratio and you can accidentally dilute the paint too much. So after doing my whole apartment and trying all of the ways, I found that the best way is to use a combination of the two approaches. For the first coat, rather than dipping your brush in water before you dip it in the paint each time, just start with a fully damp brush and that will have enough water to allow the paint to glide more easily. I actually found this out because I happened to be working with a damp brush from washing it the day before, and it ended up being the best application for the first coat. For the second coat, start with a dry brush and dip directly in the paint with no added water. This works because the second coat is not a full second coat, it's just blending out areas that look a bit too streaky or patchy, and it's easier to control and layer when you're working with the full richness of the paint. Why is this hybrid method the best approach? Because you're gonna have to go in and touch it up either way. Whether you use the wet or dry brush method, the first coat is always going to turn out streaky. So why not spend less time on that first coat, since it's really the second coat where everything gets blended out anyway. I just finished the first coat of just the back wall so far. I'm gonna finish doing the bulkhead and then this side as well. I was kind of freaking out. I was having a little baby internal freak out when I first started, because now I'm in the room that has the most natural daylight and I was like, damn, this is dark. Like, this looks the same way that it does in the bedroom, and I really thought it was going to be a little brighter in this room. And because it's a small space, I didn't want a dark color because I feel like it'll just make it look smaller. Now that I'm done the whole wall, I actually really love it. It immediately feels cozy, and I think just like right next to the very stark white wall, that's what made it seem so dark. But now that the whole thing is done, it's very nice. When I say I'm done the first coat, it doesn't mean that I'm gonna do 2 full coats. The first coat you'll see is pretty streaky still. Even though I didn't use water, I didn't dip the paintbrush in water first, I just dipped it directly into the paint. It still is a bit streaky. And because you're doing this kind of X pattern, you kind of get some really harsh lines as well. I don't really like that look. I want it to be a little bit more blended. So you'll see when I go in for the second coat, I basically just touch it up in certain areas to kind of cover that streakiness and make it look more like having that cloud effect. So I'm not painting the entire wall in the second coat. It's really just a touch up and a blend type of coat. And I usually actually go in with the smaller brush because I just find that it doesn't leave as many paint strokes. But I think I'll probably go in with both this time. The thing that's also nice is that when you are using 2 different colors, even if it does end up being a tad darker than I like, I can always just kind of add more of the lighter color. So I don't even necessarily need to go in with the darker one. I can kind of just dab my brush with the lighter one and just lighten up certain areas, and it'll kind of lighten up the whole wall. It's the next day. The paint is dry and I'm gonna go in and touch up some spots. I wanna talk about cutting in. So right at the top, I have popcorn ceiling here, which is why I didn't tape the ceiling. I just kind of freehanded it. But I tried a few different approaches of what color I use to do the cut in. Do I do the darker shade on the top or do I do the lighter shade? And I tried both ways and I actually like the darker shade better. I think the darker shade makes it look a bit more finished. Whereas when I do the lighter shade on top, to me, it kind of looks a little bit like messy because that lime wash effect can't really reach all the way to the top. So you kind of see this like lighter space before you see that lime wash effect. Whereas when you put the darker shade on top, it almost gives it like an ombre effect. I just think it looks more finished. I actually thought the lighter one would be better, which is why I have quite a bit to touch up because I mostly did the technique using the lighter paint for the cut in. But now that it's all dry, I realize I actually like the darker one. So I want to talk about something that's been bothering me and what I have decided to do about it. Part of the reason that I really love the faux lime wash is because of the texture that it gives your walls. It's not a physical texture that you can touch. Like when you touch it, it's not that your wall feels bumpy, but when you look at it from the side, you can visually see the texture. And because of how you apply the lime wash, when you look at it from the side and light is kind of shining off of it, it almost has like a cobblestone effect. You kind of see these like organic, irregular shaped mini clouds, but they have a sort of pattern to them. So the way I've been approaching applying the lime wash paint is that I will do the first coat all in the same time, and then I will do all of the touch-up coat in the same time. But with the wall behind my desks, I kind of did a third touch-up that didn't involve doing the entire wall. So I did my first coat as usual. I did my second coat of touch-ups, but then I saw a little bit of paint streak lines and I did a third touch-up session, but it didn't involve doing the entire wall. So what I noticed is because I did that touch-up separately and I didn't do the entire wall, it didn't give me that more uniform cobblestone organic look. It more so gave me that look that I did random touch-ups. The sheen in those areas does not seamlessly blend in with the rest of the wall because it was done at a different time. So in the same way that when you do regular paint and you apply it with a roller, if you have a section that you patch up later, you see the paint stroke lines from where you did that touch-up paint when it is shining in the natural light. And there's really no way around that. For you to get rid of those lines, you would have to basically paint your entire wall again so that those lines are hidden. These patches were really bothering me because they were just so much shinier than the rest of the wall and really sticking out to me as just patches. So I went back in for another touch-up and really tried to blend them out. And although it looks better than it did before, it still doesn't blend in with the rest of the wall simply because I did not touch up the entire wall. Some of you might think this is crazy. Like some of you would not be bothered by this at all. And when you're looking at the wall front on, you don't see anything. Like this is really just an issue for when you see the wall at an angle from the side because of the natural daylight. But because of how my unit is laid out and where the window is, it is just something that I see all the time. I see it when I'm in the kitchen. I see it when I'm in the bedroom because the mirror door in the bedroom reflects this wall. So it's kind of just constantly in my face. So why does this matter? Well, this matters if this is something that you would also notice and is something that would also bother you. If that is the case, then I would make sure that when you are doing your second coat of touch-up, you do the whole wall. You are doing everything. Part of the reason I did this wall a little bit different from the other ones was because we were having friends over the night that I was doing the painting of this wall, and I really just wanted to get it done. So even though I did do my second coat of touch-up, I didn't actually get to touch up every single area that I wanted, which is what caused me to go in a third time, which is what gave me these random patches. So I've been really meditating on whether or not it is something I'm going to fix, because right now, truthfully, it really bothers me. I don't feel at ease when I look at this wall, whereas when I look at the living room one from the side, I actually really like it. I prefer that it has that textured look even from the side versus just a flat one color wall. But the thing is, I don't really feel like doing the whole wall again because I'm all painted out. So if I were to go in and fix it and do the whole wall again, it's kind of coming from like an irritated, agitated place where I just need this sense of control and I just want to get rid of this feeling that I have where every time I look at the wall, it bothers me. And if I'm coming from that more agitated place, I feel like the end result might not be better. It might be worse than what it is now. So I'm going to chill on it for now. I think it is definitely still something that I do want to fix. And I actually still have to paint the baseboard on this last very long wall here because I haven't got around to doing that yet. When I paint the baseboard, I'm gonna have to pull out these desks anyway. And when I do that, I'm gonna come from a more calm place, a place where my intention is not to get rid of the problem, but more to add more beauty to this wall. And I think if I approach it that way, where it's coming from a more peaceful place than an agitated place, then I think I can actually fix the wall effectively and get that final result that I'm looking for. I'm sure some of you think that this is an unhealthy amount of attention to detail, and sometimes it be like that. I don't ask for these things to bother me, and in fact, I wish that they didn't, but I think that that is part of this lesson overall. Do not try to be too perfectionist with your faux lime wash because that is the look of it. The look is meant to be organic. The look is meant to be a little uneven. Sometimes I feel like the more that you try to fix something, the worse you can make it. But I will say with the faux lime wash, it is very forgiving. If you ever see some spots that you need to touch up, you can always do it in the future. Just know that if that wall happens to land within sunlight, looking at it from an angle might bother you. I'm curious to know if this sort of thing would bother you the same way that it does me, or if you're like, I don't even know what you're talking about and it looks great. I hope this video helped. Give it a like if you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.